Welcome to Outside the Box. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with Scott Barrett. You can find him on Twitter at ScottBarrettDFB. We are, of course, representing two different companies. I'm here for Stochastic. Scott is representing Fantasy Points. We're going to be taking a look at both the Stochastic tools and the Fantasy Points tools today. That is the beauty of this show, as we're looking at the best tools in the industry. Two different sites, really powerful tools coming together to find the best plays in DFS. Scott, I know we started a little bit late. What a lot of people here might not know about Scott is he is obsessed with UFC fighting. And we had, Scott, you called it the fight of the year. Did it end up being the fight of the year that you were watching prior to the show?
Yeah, I don't know. My heart was in it for Volkanovski, who lost via KO in round one. A little disappointing, but maybe not too unexpected. Yeah, it was two of the top three pound for pound fighters going up against each other, but Volkanovski was at a weight class disadvantage. He was also fighting on 11 days short notice following arm surgery. A lot of things working against him. Maybe shouldn't have taken this fight. But it was a fun card and, fun fight. Yeah, I have a UFC podcast, Go Pada UFC podcast. Check that out. No one listens to it, but me and my friends have fun.
Yeah, you'd think there's probably some crossover, NFL and UFC. And of course,
those are like the only two sports in my opinion. I started out as a baseball writer. Just don't care about anything beyond UFC and football.
I'm a huge NBA fan, so I can't follow you down that. But yeah, I love football. I love NBA, baseball. Fun going to games. I don't watch as much baseball as the other sports, but yeah, definitely.
It's like not even that fun going to games. I think you'll get hammered and like that. It's fun. I think the best sport to be at live, and I've been to like 100 live football games, a bunch of live baseball games, UFC events, hockey. I can't follow it, can't watch it on TV, but like live, I think hockey's the best sport.
A lot of my friends say the same thing, like even people who are not hockey fans, so that you're not alone. I've only been to one hockey game in my life. I used to live like less than half a mile from the Excel Center in St. Paul. It was like awesome. Just like a friend of mine offered me a ticket. He happened to have 2 tickets to the game. So we walked down and it was like really cool. Just like being like walking distance from the Excel Center. It was fun, but I still didn't like it as much as like NBA games personally. That was also like we didn't have great seats. I didn't really know what was going on most of the time. There's a lot of stuff going against the hockey experience. So I didn't like it as much as NBA games live. I don't go to too many football games. I prefer football from my couch, to be honest. I don't really love going to the games as much as watching it from home. But I
need season tickets for like, I don't know, 28 years. Just so much better at home watching on TV.
Yeah. Josh Gillum is with me on NBA. I have Wolves season tickets, so I split 4 ways. So essentially, I have quarter of a season tickets for the Wolves, but I go to a lot of Timberwolves games. I love going to basketball games.
How do you pick which games you get to go to? Do you do like a draft, a snake
do.
draft?
So we are a lot of guys with personalities similar to myself, so it's a very easygoing group where it's just like, yeah, I could go to that game. I don't really care that much. We work it out pretty easily. I have another group of friends who actually got the tickets next to us where they do a draft, and it's like much more like they're more like the type A personalities, really strong opinions about who goes where, so they have to do that kind of thing. We're all pretty easygoing, just like I don't really care which games I go to. I actually like, as a DFS player, I prefer kind of the gross games where it's like the Wolves in a game with another team that's not that great. Like I don't want to go see LeBron. I don't want to go see, Kevin Durant. I'd rather go to like the bad teams that A, we're going to win, and B, it's going to be a really fun fantasy atmosphere. So, so that makes it a little bit easier too, that I don't prefer the games that other people sometimes want to go to. But yeah, we don't have a great system for figuring it out, but we've been fine so far for the past 2 or 3 years that we've been doing it. All right, so we're going to talk some football here. If you guys hadn't guessed that we're going to talk some football, we were debating coming into the show, coming into this week. Scott and I were kind of talking about kind of seems like people aren't necessarily into the chalk talks. We were thinking about dropping. I think that we landed on we're going to keep it for now. Let us know though in the comments if you don't want to hear about the chalk. I kind of like starting by talking about which chalk we like, which chalk we're fading, just for the purpose of giving context to the slate. I think it's kind of useful.
Well, I'd like to talk about 2 things first. One, what is this show? It's Outside the Box. We're breaking down the games and the plays from a DFS, GPP, game theory perspective. ideally large field tournaments where you want to be intentional in fading the chalk and being smart about how you're fading it to give you the most leverage for your lineups and the most upside. This is going to be from a contrarian angle. This isn't just talking about the best plays, the cash plays. We both have separate shows if you want to follow that. And then I'd also like to talk about it from a macro perspective. So this is a pretty interesting slate. These are actually historically like my favorite slates to play.
Me too.
There's a lot of 6 teams on bye. And then the highest over under game of the slate is at 47.5. That's the only game over 45. And so to me, this is the sort of slate where I typically dominate, where it's, like you give me a puzzle I have to figure out. The fewer variables, the quicker I'm going to solve it. And I think for DFS, it's like the less luck plays and variance plays a massive role. In a week like this, you could really get by just winning on value or value plays the field isn't really on. But it also means like, because it's such everyone else would say like thin slate, you're going to see ownership, I think, condense on plays that really aren't that great, plays that we could poke some holes in. But that's how I'm kind of thinking about this slate. How are you seeing it?
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. Like on these slates where there isn't really great chalk, you still get chalk. It just condenses around plays that are not as good as usual. So it's a great slate for GPP players who want to get a little bit different. Like there's not as much separation between the chalk plays, which are typically going to be some of the best plays on the slate, particularly like the in recent years, it's getting better and better. People are able to identify good chalk, but people still make the mistake of when there is no great chalk, they're still going to play the chalk that we do have because those are still going to be the best plays, but they don't separate as much from other plays on the slate. So we can, kind of find some more contrarian spots that really are not as far off the chalk as we often have. So we got a couple responses. Stephen Lewitt says he prefers chalk free. Fantasy Freak says chalkless as well. But continue to let us know in the comments. We'll, maybe we won't cut it out completely, but maybe we will condense our discussion of the chalk because I do think it is, somewhat important to give us some context of the slate. But if you guys just want to hear, like, you watch enough shows, that's kind of what I'm saying. People watch shows all week. Maybe there are people who watch enough shows that like they know who the chalk is. They just want to get into the nitty gritty of who are the diamonds in the rough. But we'll focus mostly on the diamonds in the rough. But I still think it is kind of important to give a little bit of context. But we are very open to feedback on this show, so we will take it. I wanted to give just a quick shout out here. Dija says Scott is the guy, won $1,000 last week. That is awesome to hear, Dija. Yeah, that's why we do the show. Hopefully we can find some more.
Yeah, we didn't do a recap, but I did say.
Oh, we will.
Okay. All right.
We'll do it right now. Actually, I have it pulled up. So this was the winning lineup last week. Desmond Ridder to Drake London and Kyle Pitts was something that we talked about all week on this channel last week. I think we talked about it last week as well. It was a great spot against the Commanders.
I had Drake London as a cash play. I had Adam Thielen as a cash play. Loved Amon-Ra St. Brown. Rashid Shaheed, we talked about. I forgot about him, and then you brought him. I'm like, oh yeah, well he has the nuts matchup because he crushes zone, and it was one of the defenses playing zone at the highest rate in the league. And then I guess Kyron and Raheem and Cup were just the obvious chalk plays, right?
Yep. I almost DM'd you, Scott, for to ask you that question of like, is Rashid Shaheed a good play on Thursday night? Because I was like, I know that he is good in one type of matchup. I don't remember what it is. So I asked Scott before the show if he can show me on this show where to find this information in the Fantasy Points data suite. Because I'm good. I think I'm pretty good at using the Fantasy Points data suite at this point. I use it all the time, but I still don't know how to find like which defenses play the most zone versus man, which players are good zone versus man. So we're going to take a look at that at some point during the show as well. See if, we can find, I know that's one way to find some diamonds in the rough sometimes. So hopefully we can find some of those here. But yeah, I think that last week went from I didn't do well in GPP. It's like I didn't have any lineups that bubble to the top. I totally missed. I don't think I played Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that one hurt me a bit not playing ASRB. We did, yeah. We obviously we played Kyron, Mostert, Cup, all looked great. We talked about them, and yeah, Rashid Shaheed was a guy that like I hadn't thought about until I ran the lineup generator for Stochastic, and I got him in 2 of the first 4 lineups I looked at. So I was like, I guess he's a better play than I realized, and that's the beautiful thing about using the Sims lineup generator. They show you a player's range of outcomes. Like it's not just based on projection. You got to know like what is a player's range of outcomes, and so we talked about it a little bit, and you dug into the numbers a little bit and agreed that it was a strong play. So that was cool to get Rashid Shaheed right. And Dalton actually, Stochastic was one of the many sites that he gave some credit to last week. He's apparently consuming a lot of content, but the guy who won the Millie, we were one of the sites to like. So hopefully he watched this show, and we can pat ourselves on the back. But regardless, this is a lineup that looks like something that we could have played last week. We have not, hasn't been every week, but last week I think that we could have gotten to this lineup. I myself did not come anywhere near it. I had a bad week last week. How did you play much last week? How did it go for you?
Yeah, remember I finished top 10 and I was duking it out with Mia Khalifa.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. I forgot about that. And I'm pretty sure that it really is Mia Khalifa, not just somebody using her name.
Yeah, that's wild.
For sure. No, I have no idea. Yeah, that was funny. All right. Anything else you want to say about last week?
No, I don't think so.
We did see, I was once again really on Jalen Waddle last week, and that again, like he didn't quite get there, but like it seemed like they were trying to focus on him, so that was a little bit disappointing. And then I also played a ton of that Eagles game, and it feels like it could have happened. They just like Devontae Smith dropped the big passes, and it's just the game did not work out well at all. That's it's funny. A week later, I have so much trouble remembering what happened in the previous week, but those are the parts that I remember from last week. So we have been doing the Survivor. Another thing that kind of like, maybe we'll drop this from the show at some point, but we'll do it one more week. I know. Did the Rams win last week? I actually don't remember if the Rams won last week. Somebody let us know if Scott got his pick right. I mean, we've all each already missed a pick.
No, Rams won.
Rams. So the only pick that you actually have not missed a pick, except for we just didn't do week 4. So you actually have, I think, 100% success rate still.
Nice.
But all right, well let's get into.
Week 7. A lot of people got knocked out last week. Right?
What was the? Oh yes, you're absolutely right. That
Dolphins
right.
lost.
Oh, did the Dolphins lose last week?
Or was that the week before? No.
Wait, who? There were a couple. The Browns, the 49ers lost, right?
That's what it was.
49ers lost. That was a big one last week. Might have been another one too.
Yeah.
Looking at some
3 years ago.
A week like flies by, and it's like I don't know at what point like the week feels like it flips, and suddenly I forget everything that happened last week. As I guess as I focus more on the upcoming slate, I just forget what happened on the last slate. All right, so our top totals here, we have the Bills 7.5 implied spreads, I should say. Bills 7.5 point spread. We have the Seahawks with an 8.5 point spread. And what else? Do we have any others? The Niners with a 7-point spread. So those are our 3 biggest spreads for this week. Any lineup, any matchups that stand out to you, and we can look at what you've already picked. So you've picked the Ravens, the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Lions, and the Rams.
Yeah, I think it's between the Seahawks, Bills, and Niners. I don't know. I worry about Josh Allen's health. 49ers are pretty dinged up, but really it's just like I'd rather save those teams. So I'd go with the Seahawks and continue to target the Cardinals.
I got to stop letting you go first because I already used the Niners and the Bills. I don't have the Seahawks was the only one of those teams that I have not already used. So I'm gonna have to get off the wall here.
You can just take the Seahawks.
No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna get off the wall. I'm gonna go to something completely different. I think I can go to the Rams. Like this spread doesn't seem as big as it should be to me. I feel like the Rams should beat the Steelers pretty easily. So I'm probably wrong about that. Like the spreads are smarter than I am, but yeah, I'm going Rams here. All right. That's quick and easy doing the Survivor picks. All right. What else? What else do we talk about here? So I think we just at this point get into the different positions. That sound good to you?
Let's do it.
And I've just received word that we got an update to our tools. So that is, we have the most updated information. That's obviously helpful. And we're going to start with quarterbacks here. So I'll start in the top stacks tool. All right, and we'll start highest top stack odds, obviously Kansas City. All right, so let's start with talking about the chalk. I guess probably the boom bust tool is the easier place to start in looking at the quarterback chalk. And I'm going to sort to quarterbacks here. Sorting by ownership. All right, so our interesting. So we've got Geno Smith up to 11%. Had not seen that earlier. I think that has come up throughout the week. Not any really intense chalk. What do you think of Mahomes and Geno here?
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised Mahomes and Justin Herbert aren't that chalky, just because that is like clearly the highest over under game, and like this is a game that typically explodes for fantasy goodness. Obviously, if it's 12% for Mahomes and it's 1.5% for Herbert, I would much rather play Herbert. He is more, I think, stackable upside. He's also he's leading the league in fantasy points per game among quarterbacks. So, yeah, I like that. I get it. Geno makes a lot of sense. Maybe 11% feels high, but Kenneth Walker is probably going to be the highest owned play of the slate. So you get leverage there. Baker and Russ, I have no interest in. Kenny Pickett, I have no interest in. But I like the other guys at that top of that list.
Yeah. So it's, So Mahomes, Geno makes some sense. It's hard to poke holes. So I think the chalk talk becomes more interesting. I think when we have like chalk that we think is bad chalk, and here I just don't think that it's not that interesting, because I think both Mahomes and Geno Smith make sense. Like I'd say both seem like good chalk to me. Mahomes against that Chargers defense, Geno Smith against the Cardinals. They do get Budda Baker back this week. So I guess that would be my question for you. Two questions as far as Geno Smith. Do you prefer him to have DK Metcalf or not have DK Metcalf? Because then you get more concentrated target tree, and it's also cheaper if you can play 3,900 JSN as a wide receiver too. And also, does Budda Baker returning affect anything for you as far as playing Geno?
Not significantly. Budda Baker's return, no. I'd probably rather have DK Metcalf, but yeah, I seriously think that there's like a rule you can make when you're building lineups. Let's say you do 6 lineups, right? And that's to have Kenneth Walker or a Seahawks receiver on every single lineup. Like that just makes so much sense to me, given how bad Arizona is everywhere, on the ground, through the air. And so to me, it's really just Seattle can do whatever they want to do. But what do they want to do is historically, typically, it's run the ball, and given the spread in their favor, that's probably what they're going to do. And Kenneth Walker is one of the most game script sensitive players in fantasy. So awesome spot for him.
Okay. Yeah. Kenneth Walker looking good. Geno looking good. All right. Well, I think that we have, and by the way, I do want to mention people saying the Eagles lost. That was the other big one. Eagles losing to Zach Wilson and the Jets. So we had those two. Just the Eagles and the Niners are the two teams that just tanked so many people playing survivor pools. Yeah, that's good memory, guys. All right, so moving on down. So we talked about the chalk. Let's just get into who are some of our favorite value plays. And I'll open it right up to you, Scott. Who do you like this week that's not getting a ton of ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I like that tier. I like Lamar. Well, definitely already said I like Herbert. I like Lamar. I like Sam Howell. I like Jordan Love. I like Stafford. Deshaun Watson, I like. Is he even on this?
Good question. Where is Deshaun Watson?
I guess not. You still have PJ Walker.
We have PJ Walker. PJ Walker. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Are we confident that Deshaun Watson's going to play? I thought it was still like 50-50. I know.
I don't know. Last I checked, it seemed like they were pretty confident he was going to play.
Okay. Well, I mean, you can give your analysis. Obviously, he'll get some ownership if he's in, but you're going to have interest in Deshaun Watson if he plays.
Yeah, it's just an easy top 5 matchup. And Indianapolis is dealing with some injuries to their secondary, their defensive line. And like Watson hasn't played well this year, but like the fantasy production was there, solid. There's value to his receiving core. Josh Allen, I think, is a little interesting. It's just like crazy to me to see him at 3.6% ownership, especially on a thin slate like this. He crushes New England historically. He's been the number 2 quarterback in fantasy this year, despite not throwing a lot. The big concern to me is that shoulder injury he picked up last game. He looked really bad in the second half, and his ADOT was like more than cut in half. But yeah, again, I really like Sam Howell, Matthew Stafford, a lot of those guys in that middle range.
Okay. Yeah. So Josh Allen is the one on the high end that like stood out to me. I named him as my favorite stack of the week. Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs, just very straightforward. And I also like we're getting virtually zero ownership on Gabe Davis. I don't think I'm going to go to Deontay Hardy, but he's at least somebody that you could consider in those stacks. You got the tight ends. So a lot of different ways to do it. But to me, like I think I'm going to have some Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs stacks. But that's a good note that he does have that shoulder injury. I guess maybe I'm not factoring that in as much as I maybe should be. It's kind of hard to know unless you get real great reporting. But it is worth noting that kind of concern there for Josh Allen. Daniel Jones, we're gonna have to take out because it sounds like he is not going to go. We're gonna have Tyrod Taylor in there instead. What do you think of that? So, do you have any interest in Tyrod Taylor?
No, I don't.
Okay, no
like
interest.
I said, I like Howell a lot.
So it was, to me, if it was Daniel Jones, I was going to have some interest just because like it's obviously the offensive line is awful for the Giants, but like the Commanders have just like consistently given up big scores to passing games. So I'm like, if it's Daniel Jones, I would have some interest. Is it just because it's Taylor, or would you have been out on Daniel Jones also?
I would have considered Daniel Jones. I just don't really see much upside for Tyrod Taylor. But it's more than anything, I just really like Sam Howell. He's basically last year's Daniel Jones, whereas like this year's Daniel Jones kind of sucks ass because it's like one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. But Howell's hit 17 DK fantasy points in 4 or 5 games. If you just exclude one game, he's averaging 21.1. That's basically tied with Patrick Mahomes, who ranks 3rd and is $3,000 more expensive on DraftKings. Giants defense is better than Washington's, but they're not a defense to fear. They play man at one of the highest rates in the league. That's good for mobile quarterbacks like Sam Howell. Giants defense is the chalkiest defense of the slate. And so it kind of like goes back to what I was saying about Kenneth Walker versus Seattle receivers. You can make a similar case there. Like I said, I really like Sam Howell. I like several of his receivers. And I also like Brian Robinson as sort of like the Tyler Algier play from 2 weeks ago, except much stronger.
Are you going to play the placeholder for the Commanders? The kick holder, the guy
Jahan Dotson? No,
yeah,
probably not. Probably not him.
All right, just because you say you like several of them, I guess we'll get into that when we talk about receivers. But man, that was wild to see Jahan Dotson practicing as the holder.
Well, they did that with the Antonio Gibson last year. They had him returning kicks in the preseason, and everyone made a big deal about it. And like you listen to the quotes from Ron Rivera, and it was clear he was in their doghouse. I wonder if like Jahan Dotson's been, half-assing it in practice or something like that.
Okay, that would make sense. All right, and you mentioned that you do have interest in Matthew Stafford. Seems like a decent spot against Pittsburgh. We have nice positive leverage on Stafford, 5% ownership, 7% chance of being optimal. I guess I was going to ask you who you're going to pair him with. We can do that in the wide receiver discussions.
I think it's a great spot for him. He ranks 3rd, 4th in passing yards. He's just gotten unlucky in the touchdown department. He has Cooper Kupp back, fully healthy, looks awesome, but now no Kyron Williams. You have to think the team leans more pass heavy now, especially in the red zone. This is an easy top 10 matchup based on the numbers I'm looking at. And for the wide receivers, like top 2 matchup. So like the stacking upside there. I think he's close to a lock to hit the 300-yard bonus on DraftKings.
So we've seen teams crush the Broncos all season, and then the Chiefs come in and put up 19 points. Like the Chiefs couldn't get it done against that Broncos defense. So I'm sort of inclined to be like, okay, the Broncos defense has given up a lot of big plays throughout the year. Maybe we take some shots on Jordan Love. He's chucked it a little. He chucked it down to Christian Watson. Maybe like this will improve their accuracy in the long passing game. What do you think? Is the Broncos defense, think they're coming together and like getting better, or do you think that it's still a defense we can take advantage of with Jordan Love?
Yeah, no, I think they're terrible. They had one good game, but no, I think this is definitely a defense to exploit. And again, Jordan Love, similar to what I was saying with Geno and Kenneth Walker, is you can make a case, a really compelling case for Jordan Love and some of the pass catchers. But I really like Aaron Jones, who's drawing contrarian levels of ownership. I think he's one of the best plays of the slate. But yeah, I like both angles there. I think it's a similar thing. I think Love really could smash through the air. I think Jones, if he's fully healthy, really could smash on the ground. Jordan Love is another player I think we're kind of underrating how good he's been for fantasy, even though he hasn't been good in real life. If you just exclude his most, like before the Raiders game, he was fantasy football's QB5. He has Christian Watson fully healthy, Aaron Jones back, and this is an easy top 3 matchup based on anything you want to look at.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, glad to hear that, because I was thinking about playing Jordan Love. It seems like a spot to take advantage of, but I wasn't sure if like they do have some talent in that back in the secondary there for the Broncos. So I kind of thought like maybe they are starting to make it work, but yeah, I'm happy.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you have one elite shutdown cornerback.
Yeah,
it doesn't really move the needle if the other 2 starting cornerbacks are terrible.
right.
And the defense, is at least inconsistent and below average at getting pass rush. So, yeah, maybe it's a tough day for Christian Watson. I'd put it at like a 60% odds. Patrick Surtain shadows, and then he would only shadow for like 60 to 70% of his routes. But I still think it's a good matchup for Jordan Love. And if Surtain does shadow, then that makes Romeo Doubs interesting. And obviously Luke Musgrave's the chalkiest tight end in the slate. That's a great matchup. But like, Denver's really bad against the pass, but they're like historically bad against the run.
Okay. This is a good note from Steven, and people were talking about this on the earlier show. AccuWeather has the winds at 23 miles per hour at game time in the Pats game, gusts up to 40. Yeah, it's something to monitor.
Well, remember the last time New England and Buffalo played a game with 40 plus mile per hour winds,
they didn't throw the ball. I do remember that.
They literally
I think it was a Showtowns. It was a primetime slate, showdown slate. Yeah, that was
yeah, I slid into our Discord and was like, hammer every passing game under and every running game over. Betting is illegal in Texas, but I feel like I could have made a ton of money if I parlayed that. Same game parlayed that.
Yeah, no, that seems like a good parlay. So is that something? Is that maybe part of the reason you're not like? It seems like you're not as interested in Josh Allen as I am. Like, to me, he stood out as like my favorite play, but maybe with the wins, is that one of the reasons to maybe stay away?
I mean, it's another argument for me. Me is like I really try not to play players I think are hurt. And
good point. Yeah,
it was just scary last week. Really didn't look right. And like I said, his ADOT got cut in half or more than half. Yeah, a divisional game, all that stuff. But I get it. I really get. It's not difficult to argue for Josh Allen when he's at 3.6% and he's played as well as he has this season.
Yeah, right. Man, please do not trade Surtain to the Eagles. Like, that defense is already the Eagles I think are still my Super Bowl favorite. And if they can add Surtain, like, it's just getting unfair at this point. I have not heard that rumor. And then Marcos, yeah, I agree with you. Justin Herbert's ownership, I feel like that's it can actually come in that low. Like that is the highest total game on.
Yeah, I just think that's wrong. But I do think he's definitely the better play from that game, because I do think he'll be lower owned.
Yeah, I think that that ownership is going to come up. 1.5% is not going to hold by game time, but still, yeah, it's going to be lower than Mahomes. That is for sure. All right, let's see. Any other quarterbacks? Did you have any others that you wanted to talk about?
No, not really. I will say I wrote up Brian Hoyer and then deleted it as my like super galaxy brain don't play me play of the week, where it was just like, okay, so Devontae Adams could break the slate. He has the squeaky wheel narrative. He's amazing. He's like a 50% first read target share. It's a great matchup. If Jimmy Garoppolo were starting, I would have 100% exposure to Jacoby Myers, who's so underrated, so mispriced. Hoyer has familiarity in this scheme. Again, it's a good matchup. And it's like, we're just asking him to be, Jimmy Garoppolo levels of competent, which doesn't feel like too high of a bar. He needs less than 15 points to hit 3x value. But I deleted it. Don't tail me on that. But like, that's like a maybe a milli play if you want to get super cute.
Okay. First of all, I don't know what this name is. High TV says, hey, are there any tips for betting using FanDuel or DraftKings? Neither Scott nor I live in a legal betting state, so I don't think that we are necessarily the people you should go to unless you want to take the advice Scott was just giving. It's probably factored in by now, the taking the unders on passing in that Buffalo game.
It's probably not, but it's also like, I kind of don't trust weather until the day of. And that game was also like extremely unique, where it was like below 0 temperatures plus like tsunami winds.
Yeah, so I don't think we are the best place to go, but I guess my recommendation would head over to OddsShopper. You can find all the best current available plays on OddsShopper across all the different books. So check that out. And then I wanted to ask you, Chris, asking what are we thinking about Teabag, Tyson Bagent?
Yeah, I'm not going to go that route. All DJ Moore's maybe interesting as a one-off, but I don't think you have to. I don't think he brings anything beyond that.
All right, fair enough. All right, so we've talked about all of the quarterbacks you wanted to talk about. I think that we've talked about all the quarterbacks that we could talk. Like, people were talking about Kenny Pickett, Baker Mayfield. I don't think I'm going. We do have positive leverage on both of these spots. They just, to me, don't stand out as like plays that I'm really honing in on. I think they're fine. As you can see, some positive leverage there. All right, let's take a look at the running backs on the slate. And we'll start with the chalky running backs as usual. Actually, before we jump into the running backs, guys, we don't do a lot of selling on this show, but gotta make some sales so that we can keep doing the show. We got to be able to make some sales. So first of all, hit the like button on the video. Helps us out quite a bit. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers here on the Stochastic channel. I know Fantasy Points also putting out more and more content, trying to get more subscribers. So you can subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. But also the real sale that I want to tell you about is you can zone out for the next minute if you don't live in one of these states. If you live in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado, we've got a great deal for you. Again, that's Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, Colorado. Bet $365. Bet $5. You're going to get $150 in bonus bets. That is a fantastic deal. Really, really low effort commitment on your part. You're just betting $5 on Bet 365 to get $150 in bonus bets. Really fantastic deal. Check it out if you have not already signed up for Bet 365 and you live in Kentucky, Ohio, New Jersey, Virginia, Iowa, or Colorado. You're going to want to take advantage of this offer. Of course, you need to be 21 plus in most states or 18 plus in Kentucky. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Just wanted to let you guys know about that deal in case you haven't already taken advantage of it. All right, we're going to move on and talk about some running backs, Scott. But Stewie actually gave us a super.
You want to get to that when we get to wide receivers? I saw that.
Oh yeah. We'll save that, Stewie, for
because I did mention both of them already.
Okay,
as players, to be thinking about.
Yep, that makes sense to save the wide receiver talk for when we're talking about wide receivers. Let's take a look at the top ownership here. So Kenneth Walker facing the Cardinals makes a lot of sense. Josh Jacobs, Isaiah Pacheco, Jordan Ford. We've got kind of a lot of chalk here. So let's start there. Let's start with the chalk and anybody over 10%. Let's run down the list. Who do you like above 10%? So anybody, Deontay Foreman up to Kenneth Walker here. Who do you like? Who are you fading?
Yeah. So Kenneth Walker, if that ownership percentage is accurate, 23.5%, I think I'm going to have a lot of him because, that's really not obscene. And I do think he is one of the best plays of the slate. So that one I'm really comfortable with. And I know this is a show where we try and intentionally poke holes in the chalk and try and fade it. But I really have no issue with that. Josh Jacobs, kind of the same thing. Like this really, he's so due for regression. Seeing arguably the best usage and volume in fantasy. It's significantly better than it was last year when he finished third in fantasy points per game. The counter argument for him, though, I think is easier than it is for Walker, which is just that, well, he hasn't done anything this year, and now Brian Hoyer's his quarterback. So you could get off of that, but I'm not personally offended by his ownership percentage by any means. With Pacheco and Jerome Ford, I think they're much easier to fade for, especially for tournaments. Jerome Ford hasn't seen a red zone snap since week 2. I think week 2 or week 3. I think week 2. And Kareem Hunt has seen a rising snap share every week thus far. Pacheco, like obviously, yeah, like his usage is growing, his volume is really solid, but he's still a player who's fallen short of, I think, 33% of the team snaps inside the 10-yard line in over half of his games. He's at 50% on the full season. And Mahomes is just someone who's typically very greedy near the end zone. So I question his touchdown upside. This is a cash core running back for me. It's just at a 21% ownership. I am questioning the touchdown ceiling. Ford, I'll be fading. Gibbs, that feels right to me. You can argue, well, he hasn't done well. He hasn't looked particularly great, etc. But Dan Campbell, like, there's a lot of like bullshitters. Dan Campbell doesn't strike me as one of those. Like Sean McVay is just an outright liar. Yeah. Don't trust a word he says. But Dan Campbell coming out saying, "Oh no, we need him to get the ball," and this has historically been either the most or the second most valuable backfield in fantasy over the past 2 seasons, measured by XFP. Rashad White, I think, is an easy fade. Like I love the player. I'm holding so many bags in season-long leagues, but it's just horrific offensive line. We saw Keyshawn Vaughn mix a bit more into his rushing work last week. He was terrible with it, as he's been all season, but that did happen. But more importantly is just I have a lot of respect for Atlanta's run defense. Donta Foreman, argument against him is, well, this was a split backfield and it's a Tyson Bagent-led offense. So I think that's an easy argument to make to fade him.
Sorry, I'm going to look at what the numbers look like. So I will say, from what I remember and what I think happened, Donta Foreman took on a bigger role after Justin Fields left the game. Is that does that play into it? Like, do you think that
so go to filter,
yep,
and then play filter,
yep,
and then go to quarter, right top right. You just had it right there, and then let's do third and fourth quarter.
I'm pretty sure I've done the same thing, Scott. Just go into the split tab instead.
Oh, you could do that as well. You're right. That would have been better. Okay. Right, so you're right. That's a great point, Neil. You caught me slipping. So second half, 63% snap share, 10 of 14 carries, the only backfield target, although route share was closer to even. I'm guessing, from what I remember, was Chicago leading in the second half, because this could be a game script thing. Because we know certain running backs and backfields are specifically game script sensitive.
The Vikings won the game.
You're right. Yeah, so that would argue against it. Let's see what the score was. It was.
Can't see it here, right?
Yeah, so Vikings led considerably throughout the entirety of the second half. So yeah.
Interesting. So, I mean, who knows if there's really much we can take away from that, but I thought it was at least worth like,
no, that was a great point. I'm glad you brought it up.
Okay, good. All right. So maybe points
he's
for
super
Donta
cheap.
Foreman, like he's 4,800.
Yeah, and 11% isn't prohibitive. It's just, I don't know how much upside is there, but yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing but 4,800. Like, I think that it wouldn't be that shocking to see him against this Raiders defense, like just like 2 touchdowns, like 60 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that'll do it for 4,800. So I don't know. Seems like enough upside, but maybe that's also wish casting, because he is one of the guys that I have a lot of in best ball who has not worked out so far. Bijan, what do you think of Bijan against the Bucks?
Yeah, he's one of these players I'm just never going to play in this spot. Buccaneers run defense is really good. It's been really good for a really long time. but he's awesome. He's just so freaking awesome. Like, so I feel like he's due for one of these slate breaking performances, and feels like it could just happen any given week, especially if the team starts kind of moving off of Tyler Algier to a larger extent. But it's just, I don't typically chase that. The next two running backs, however, I'm all over.
Yep, I figured you were going to have some interest in Aaron Jones because you mentioned it already, and I'm with you. So Aaron Jones facing the Broncos. Do you want to get into that at all?
Yeah. So the only question for me is how healthy is he? First came back from a hamstring. AJ Dillon has been so bad. He's like bottom one in every single key efficiency metric I typically look at. He is so due for a demotion of sorts, and Aaron Jones has been due for a bell cow workload for a really long time. Probably doesn't happen, just knowing the stubbornness of this coaching staff, but that's within the realm of possibilities. But more than anything, it's just this matchup couldn't be any better. The Broncos are giving up 5.9 yards per carry to opposing running backs. By schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed, plus 13.8. That's one of the highest figures I've ever seen in a week 7. So just an insanely good matchup. I asked around with a number of the injury experts I'm friends with. They're not really worried about, diminished workload or diminished effectiveness. It's more so just the risk of he re-aggravates it at any point in the game, which I think is a risk I'm willing to take at 9.4%. So love me some Aaron Jones. He also has like massive slate breaking potential. He's a lot more volatile than he gets credit for. But if you look back over the last 4 seasons, like players with 30 plus DK fantasy points per game, 40 plus DK fantasy points per game, it's really just him and Tyreek Hill. So I always like Aaron Jones for that reason, wanting to have had to have it score. And he's always seems to be underrated based on that, or under-owned based on that. So I like that. And then Austin Eckler, it's just, volume's been incredible. Volume was always incredible when either Keenan Allen or Mike Williams was out. This is the game that everyone wants to be invested in because it has the highest over-under of the slate. Question with him is the same thing. It's how healthy is he? Maybe he didn't look great last week, even though the volume was there. And 5.5 point underdog. So that's good game script for Eckler, where we should expect a high target total.
Yeah, Eckler's one of the few running backs in the league where it's like, I think it, as you said, like maybe it benefits him to be the under. Like a lot of running backs, like you want them to be the favorite, they're going to run it down their throat. But like Eckler, we've seen games where he just like gets like 5 targets in a row when they're playing from behind. They're just like, all right, we'll just throw it short to our running back if nobody's open downfield. So yeah, it's interesting that it's actually a positive thing for Eckler when they're playing from behind. We got some comments I want to touch on. Travis Homer is back, Nico says. So maybe that cuts into Deontay Foreman's floor at the very least. I don't think it really affects his ceiling, but it definitely, makes him a little bit of a hole you can poke in the play, I suppose. Steven said, is only my video catching? I think so. We haven't got anybody else saying anything, so I think that it's maybe just on your end. And that is kind of an interesting stat, Stewie, that Gibbs is lined up in the slot 21% of the time. Yeah, Gibbs is fine. I don't think I'm going to get to a ton of Gibbs just because I'm afraid of the Ravens matchup. But I think you already laid out the reasons that like he's a viable play. Like the ownership is not too crazy on Gibbs given his role and given Dan Campbell's comments.
The funny thing about Gibbs is when I was doing my prospect model on him when he was coming out, he ran a ton of routes from the slot, also lined up out wide, which is like really rare for a running back in college, and like hints at major pass catching upside. The issue is he did nothing with that in college. Like he was like no real production on those routes, whereas Bijan Robinson was kind of the opposite. He rarely ran those routes, but was hyper efficient, hyper productive with that usage. I don't know. I still have with Gibbs, I still have that the Austin Eckler interview with Matthew Harmon stuck in my head, where it's like he's really struggling on between the tackles carries. But still, like I said, I get the ownership, and like we just saw Thursday night, like the potential that these target hog running backs have of just totally breaking the slate. targets are worth 2.8 times as much as a carry. It's like 3.9 times outside of the red zone. So again, like players like Austin Eckler, Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe even Aaron Jones have immense upside, and that is what you want to be targeting on DraftKings.
Speaking of Dan Campbell not being a bullshitter, I mean, he said before the year, like, we're going to use Gibbs in some interesting ways. And I honestly hadn't thought that they really were, but as Stewie says, using him in the slot, that's at least interesting. Like, they are trying to use him in some different ways. So you talked about having some interest in Eckler. Any interest in Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, I get it. I just personally prefer the other two names. He's also dealing with injury, and it's just in comparison to Eckler, like offensive upside just feels minimal.
Okay. I'm going to sort by salary here and just let you, see if anybody is standing out to you as we, on the
Well, I
list.
talked about Brian Robinson. I kind of wanted to
Yep.
circle back on that.
Yep,
He's just been Derrick Henry levels of game script sensitive, which, targeting these running backs in games with positive projected game script has made me a lot of money in DFS over the years. This year he's averaging 18.7 fantasy points per game in wins, 9.5 fantasy points per game in losses. That's like a small sample stat, so it's prone to variance and some other things. But if you look at like XFP share and trailing versus leading, it's actually even more exaggerated. And Washington's favored. They're only favored by 3 points, but I do like them against this Giants team. It's a favorable on paper matchup. I like the idea of stacking him with Washington's defense for tournaments. Maybe I'm just a biased Giants fan, but I feel like Washington should be favored by like 5 points in this game.
Are you cheering against the Giants for the rest of the year as a biased Giants fan?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Let's get a high draft pick for once.
I was so disappointed
and not wasted
to
on
see
Evan
the
Neal.
Vikings. I went to a Vikings watch party last week, and I was so disappointed that everybody else is like, "Oh yeah, we're winning," and I'm like, "No, we need to lose. These are the games we need to lose to have a shot at a good quarterback here." I'm fully on Team Tank at this point with Justin Jefferson hurt, but who knows? If they win against San Francisco, I will completely change my tune. Like at that point, I'll be like, "All right, maybe this team is for real. They have a shot." But for now, I still think they're only winning games against terrible teams, so I don't have a lot of hope. We just got a question about Ramondre Stevenson. He's 5,600, coming in around 7% ownership. Any interest there?
No, I could see it happen. The big issue with him in comparison to last year is like he was a top 3 running back by route share, target share, and then his target share has basically been halved, which is crushing him, especially on a team that's as bad as the Patriots. You really need that to overcome the offensive line, to overcome negative game script. But he finally saw that target share come back last week, and maybe that sticks. But I just think he's a fairly thin play overall. I actually only have one more running back on my list, and I don't think you'd ever guess it in a million years.
Jaleel McLaughlin.
No, much thinner than that. This is a shout out to Jake Tribby, Galaxy Brain running back play. That's a Latavius Murray at 4,400.
All right. So we have Marcos in chat bringing up James Cook over and over. So let's talk about Latavius Murray over James Cook. That Scott's saying his guy, Latavius Murray, for more fantasy points from James Cook. He just said it, right?
Well, what I'll say is he's 0% projected. He's 4,400. And there might be underrated upside here. Latavius Murray started last week's game, and James Cook apparently earned a demotion of sorts. Murray had season highs in snap share, carry share, XFP, where it was split fairly evenly. Damien Harris is on IR. And we know, like, as much as you like James Cook, we know that Buffalo doesn't trust him near the end zone. That role has gone to Murray and Harris. Again, Harris now on IR, so presumptively that's entirely Latavius Murray's role. And so, like, I think Buffalo's favored by 8.5. Josh Allen, like I said, I have concerns with his shoulder, and I think he is like realistic multiple touchdown upside. If you give me like 5 lineups, 7 lineups, 10 lineups, like I don't know that I'll have any Latavius Murray, but it's just a player no one's on, and I could see him scoring twice on the ground.
Maybe in a 20 max you play one, then you have 5% Latavius
There you
Murray. You're
go.
you're
That's
well ahead of the
perfect.
field.
Yeah.
This is the rare the Galaxy Brain lines up with the tools also. 1.1% projected ownership, 1.6% chance of being optimal in our tools. So this is one that even the tools can get behind that Galaxy Brain. All right, so you said that you're done with running backs that you really want to talk about, but let me just throw. There are a couple that I really wanted to get your opinion on. First of all, being Denver. So we've got Javonte Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin. Both look kind of interesting to me against this Packers run defense. Do you have any interest in either Javonte or Jaleel?
No, that's just been like a super gross three-way committee backfield, and I think Green Bay stomps on them. But I don't know. McLaughlin's kind of been like super discount Devon A chain in terms of
Right.
efficiency. But yeah, I wouldn't chase that personally.
Okay. And then the other, if you want to talk about super gross situations, I feel like we have to talk about the Rams a little bit. Like to me, it's such a tough spot because I have no read on what the Rams are going to do. Like who is going to get the carries? Is there going to even be like one guy getting the carries? But at the same time, I'm like, well, I don't think Kyron Williams is anything special as a running back. So you put one of these guys. I think he's like a league average running back. I think these guys look like pretty similar. Like not tons of drop off there. And Kyron Williams has been crushing it in that offense. So is it possible that one of these three or four, if Myles Gaskin's active too, if one of them steps in and just like takes on that Myles Gaskin role, suddenly we're going to feel like idiots for not having it. Do you have any interest in the Rams? Do you have any read on what's going to happen with the Rams? What do you think as far as the Rams backfield goes?
Yeah, I think most likely outcome is it's like a super gross three-way committee where Darrell Henderson is the RB1, certainly by snap share. A lot of definitely trusted most in pass blocking and probably route running. And, maybe he gets 12 carries and 2 targets and he scores 4.6 fantasy points because he's not at all good. He was in the XFL a couple of weeks ago. Shout out to your hat.
Represent.
But he's not playable on the main slate, so I don't think it matters. I would legitimately, unironically, much prefer to play Latavius Murray over any of these Rams running backs.
All right. So yeah, that was my first instinct. Like people were talking about it on the morning show, and my first thought was, I have no idea what to do with that situation. I'd rather just stay away from it. And then I thought about it more, and I'm like, sort of galaxy braining myself into like, but what if one of them does take on the Kyron Williams role? And probably the best approach is to just avoid it. But if the ownership's not there, it's at least a little bit interesting. I see Nico is also on that McLaughlin play, but those were just the ones. The two situations I wanted to talk about were just the Denver backfield and the Rams backfield were interesting to me. But if you don't want to play them, that makes some sense to me. I think we've covered all of the running backs that I really wanted to talk about with you. So we can move on to wide receivers if you're ready. Yeah. I'm going to move on to wide receivers. I didn't know if you said anything there. Maybe you muted yourself.
Oh, I'm on mute. Yeah, I do that every show. Sorry.
Okay. I don't think you did prior to last week. You did it once, but I had at least not noticed it prior to last week.
It's part of the cashing points drinking game, and there's like an over under set at 1.5. Yeah, I think I've done it 7 weeks in a row.
People pointed out that Debo is out, not on the main site, so we don't need to talk about it. But bummer that Debo is going to miss that game. And I mean that because I want the Vikings to lose. And if they win, I'll change my approach. But for now, I want the Vikings to lose. All right, we'll take a look at some chalky wide receivers. Keenan Allen getting the most ownership on the slate, 21%. Cooper Kupp at 18%. Zay Flowers, 17%. Devontae, 15%. And then Stephon Diggs, 14%. Who do you like? Or who do you, I guess the better question is who do you dislike of the chalk here? But you can, answer however you want.
Yeah, I wouldn't have Devontae Adams anywhere near that high with Brian Hoyer starting at quarterback. Stephon Diggs, I certainly get it. Josh Allen has crushed New England historically. Diggs has done really well. But again, I don't trust that Allen's fully healthy. And then you also have weather concerns, and that's a counter argument against upside. Zay Flowers, I think, is an easy fade for tournaments. I seriously question his upside. The volume has clearly been there. Better usage and volume than Mark Andrews, which I didn't expect heading into the year. This is a player like I wasn't super high on when he was coming out. I was like, okay, he's a poor man's Golden Tate. Like so much of his production came via cheap manufactured touches, as in screens. He wasn't actually beating NFL, like serious cornerbacks. And so it seemed like sort of fraudulent to me. And like, I don't see NFL teams really valuing that. Like, that's not a really valuable role. It's like not even working. Like, look at his first down rate. It's like pretty low. The thing is, like, he's an amazing cash play because of that. Like, your catch rate on screens is so high, and he leads all players in manufactured touches. He's kind of like a Debo, the Debo role, but just not as talented as Debo. But like low ADOT guy, where his XFP is a lot lower than his targets imply. So I just question the upside. I wouldn't be excited to play him in tournaments. Cup I'd have over Keenan, and I'd have Josh Palmer a lot closer to Keenan, but I do really love Keenan. Mike Evans, I have no interest up against AJ Terrell. Really like Lockett, like Hollywood. I was hoping Hollywood would be a lot higher. I think I had him as a top 4 cash play. I was hoping he'd be a lot higher because I like Michael Wilson as leverage. This would actually be a good time to demo the fantasy points data suite. Right. So you're in advanced receiving already, yep. And you wanted to know how players perform in man versus zone. So we could look at this using our splits option, but I'm going to ask you to look at it via filtering options. First, sort by yards per route run. Do me that favor.
Yes. Sorry, I should do that first. Yards per route run.
Which is like the GOAT receiver stat, because it's a mixture of efficiency and volume. And it's like, realistically, if you just sort by yards per route run with like a decent cap on the amount of routes, then like that's just telling you who the best wide receivers in football are. And like, that's basically what. And I would set the qualifier at, well, I want to talk about John. So I would set it at minimum 25, which like isn't great, but it's just going to save us a step later. Yeah. Minimum 25.
All right.
And then I would go to the play filter right next to qualifier. And I would scroll down to coverage scheme. Keep going. Coverage scheme right there, down one. And then click top right man. Okay. And then hit apply.
All right.
And in the search bar, once it refreshes, type in Cardinals.
Okay.
By the way, we're going to have a custom matchups tool for this that makes this a lot more simplistic and easier to use. We're just like a week away from developing that.
Oh, sweet.
All right. So can you exit out of the filter out just because it's not showing?
It's taking up too much space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So you see Marquise Brown 2.52. He's clearly the team's man beater. And that's always been the case throughout his career. Excellent in one-on-one man coverage. And then you see Michael Wilson, 41 routes, 0.00 yards per route run. He doesn't have a single yard in man. That's crazy. But now let's go back to the filter and let's click on zone.
All right. So now I'm going, play.
Yep. Coverage scheme. Down. Back to where you were.
Yep. Do I have to unclick man or does it automatically?
It automatically.
Okay. So now we're going to check out zone.
Chris Ostro brought up Puka versus man. Yeah, Puka has been crushing zone, but he's been a lot less efficient against man. This is true of generally all rookie wide receivers. Rashee Rice is the same way. All right, so we're looking at zone right now. And Michael Wilson, clearly the team's most efficient receiver against zone. Trey McBride has barely played, so that could just be a small sample size thing. But like, look at how it flips with him and Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, absolutely flips.
Basically the same usage, but Wilson has been far more efficient. And why is that important this week? Because the Seahawks play zone coverage at the highest rate in the league. Not only that, but they're giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver twos. They're just middle of the pack against wide receiver ones. What is Michael Wilson but like the clear wide receiver 2 and zone beater? And he's 3,800 and only 2% owned. So I really like him as a potential leverage play off of Hollywood. But like, according to your numbers, I think according to ours, Hollywood was higher owned, but
Okay.
Realistically, he's just a great play. He's just a great value and no one's on him. And so we, if you want, we could do the same thing with Jonnu Smith. I don't think we have to, but Jonnu Smith is averaging negative yards per route run against man. Like, that's just insane. But he's top 16 among all receivers, including like Stephon Diggs, Justin Jefferson, top 16 in yards per route run against zone. He's not quite a full-time player, but I like him for that reason. He's up against a defense that plays zone at a top 3 rate. But so this is just one of the things that I like to look at.
Yep.
And this is really like just a clear edge for DFS because no one does this. It's important. It's really important not to overstate what this is. This is just like, there's a player you already like, and you see this and you're like, oh, check. Right. I like him even more now. You're not playing, a bad player over a good one just because of splits like this.
Yeah. That's an important note, I think.
What does Fantasy Labs do? They call it like a perk or something. I don't know, but it's basically what that is. It's just like another feather in the cap for a player you're already considering.
Okay, but let me ask you one more question. And I don't know, and this I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. Is there a way for me, as somebody who doesn't necessarily know off the top of my head which defenses play the most man versus which?
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to see that in the Fantasy Points data suite?
There's a way to do it right now, but it's super convoluted. Okay. This is something that should be up in 5 days. If it's not up in 5 days at the latest, I'm going to be angry guy. So hopefully it's there. Yeah, we've been working on that for quite a while.
Okay, so not worth looking at it just yet, because next week hopefully we'll have just a better way to
see where it's just right there in front of your face, so easy to navigate. And then we're also going to develop coverage shell matchup tools based on like my own formula that I came up with, where it looks at every receiver and their success rate against man versus zone, or single high versus 2 high, or cover 4 individually versus cover 1 individually. And then how often the defense does that. And it builds out an expected fantasy points. And so it's really going to highlight basically exactly what I did for you. It's just like the top guy in this tool is going to be Michael Wilson, because his defense plays a coverage cell that he dominates. And so that's just going to be a huge edge for DFS players, because again, like there's so many things that are factored into ownership, and this isn't one of them right now.
Right. Okay. That's awesome. And let me ask, since we're already here, and I kind of wanted, you and I talked before we started doing the show about expected fantasy points, which is not really a stat that I was familiar with. And then you told me about what goes into it, and I was like, wow, that's a really powerful stat. So can you just tell me a little bit about what goes into expected fantasy points?
Yeah, this is like my baby. I've been talking about this. I used to call it actual opportunity back in like 2015 or 2016. And it like made me so much money in DFS early in my career, or at least brought me a lot of recognition. And now like a lot of sites use it and talk about it, but I still think it's like maybe the most underrated stat in fantasy. It's the closest thing I've ever come to a holy grail stat. What it does is I have a really robust sample of play-by-play data. It looks at every single carry from every single down and distance from the edge zone. So a carry from the 1 yard line is 5 times more valuable than a carry from the 50-yard line. Whatever it is, obviously that's super intuitive. And then same thing for targets. It looks at targets by air yards. So a 20-yard throw is more valuable than a negative 6-yard throw. The expected catch rate is lower, but the upside and value to that is higher. End zone targets are worth more than non-end zone targets. Targets inside the 10 are worth more than, et cetera. And so it looks at every specific individual carry and target, and it adds that up to based on what a perfectly average player would have done with the exact same volume. That's your expected volume. It's just like a broad bucket. Here's the worth of the role that you have. And then players are going to rise above that or fall short of that. In the case of Josh Jacobs, to me, he's just a clear regression candidate. He ranks 3rd in XFP per game, 15th in fantasy points per game. He's just a clear player to target.
Yeah.
A player like Dameon Pierce, I just think he is a horrific fit for San Francisco's outside zone scheme, and their offensive line is terrible. He is not a regression candidate to me, even though he is right now the number one guy by XFP. It's just, I don't think he's playing. And so that's a difficult line to walk, is balancing, how much of this is on the player versus variance. But really, like, something I look at is XFP per game versus, DK salary every single week. And that's a great way to spot values.
Yeah. When you told me about it, I was like, man, that sounds like such a cool stat. So much goes into it, just having all of this data going back. And so I think it's great to use for like helping you, make sharper plays. Also, though, if your plays don't work out, like with Jalen Waddle the other week, didn't work out, but then I see second in expected fantasy points. So I could still feel like I was right, even though I don't get any money out of it.
That was the exact same thing the week before too. Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote up, is like, he's due to go nuclear. It's coming. It's going to happen. But yeah, there's so many weeks where I'm like, damn, if DraftKings scored by XFP and not fantasy points, I would have won so much money.
Right. All right. Well, that was a good explanation of XFP. We can continue on talking about the slate, but I just wanted to look at that real quick and get a little bit of a better idea how to play. That's pretty cool to be able to see how a player does versus man and versus zone. But I'm looking forward to seeing the new tool where it incorporates what defenses do also. That's pretty exciting. I forget where we were exactly I think we'd already done the chalk part. We should get back to actually that super chat I want to get back to from Stewie.
Yeah, please.
Because we were saving this for this part of the show. Thoughts on a DJ Moore, Devontae Adams mini secondary stack? Both see extremely high first read percentages against mid secondaries and dominate areas. I know you already said that you're not that interested in Adams. You would be interested in DJ Moore as a one-off. What do you feel of them as like a correlated secondary stack?
I mean, if Adams is like right there with Cooper Kupp, I would just rather lock button Cooper Kupp. Okay. And I like Keenan Moore, like even if he's chalky. It's just like Brian Hoyer. I mean, the guy's 57 years old. What are we doing here? But I could see it. I could definitely see it. I was just hoping he would be contrarian, but clearly he's not. DJ Moore, I do actually like. I think he's a strong contrarian play. Can you pull up the ownership for that on me?
Yep, for DJ Moore. Let's see here. DJ Moore, 3.3%.
Yeah, so that's great. Like when you see players like that, you really want to make a compelling upside argument for him, and I think it is compelling. It's like a counter argument against Devontae Adams is that like Jacoby Myers is outscoring him on perfectly equivalent volume. But like for DJ Moore, he averages 30.7 DK fantasy points per game over his last 3 games. The matchup's like not great, but it still feels like if Justin Fields were fully healthy, he should be 7,500 instead of 6,500. And so then then you have to consider like, well, okay, how big of a downgrade is Justin Fields to Tyson Badgett? And it's like, right. It's not like Fields was some great hyper accurate passer or anything, right? So how much of a downgrade is this really? And there is something you see with particularly young, inexperienced quarterbacks who just like lock on to their wide receiver one by any means necessary. And that is what we saw last week. Badgett only had 14 pass attempts, but he targeted DJ Moore in 43% of them. He counted for over 50% of Badgett's passing yards. I will say, like in my write-up, Scott Barrett's Week 7 DFS breakdown, he didn't rank too highly for me among the contrarian names. There are a lot I like, but I do see the clear upside. I do think we'll see some maybe like 3 screens and like 7 other targets on top of that. So I think the volume should be good. But again, quarterback play and matchup concerns.
Right. That makes sense. You said that you're not interested in playing any Tyson Badgett. You're just interested in the DJ Moore one-off potentially.
Yeah. And even then only mildly interested, if I'm being honest.
Marco's very, very excited about Jerry Jeudy. So I got to say, I've not really thought about playing Jerry Jeudy this week, but if we want to talk about a narrative play coming off the week where he just got completely embarrassed by Steve Smith, has a horrible game. Do we think Russell Wilson comes out and just peppers him with targets this week? Any interest in Jerry Jeudy against the Packers?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I typically fade these narratives just because like I feel like I have so much of an edge with the data science that I don't need to go. But it's also like he had that narrative last week and he sucked ass. So
yeah, exactly.
He might just suck.
We do. We have a little bit of, so we only have 4.4% ownership. So this is the spot where it's like, speaking of like, yeah, maybe it's a little bonus. We already got positive leverage on Jerry Jeudy. Not something that I've considered at all, but like he looks good in the tools. If you want to play into the narrative, I guess you can do it if you want to. All right. Any other wide receivers that you really want to talk about, Scott?
Yeah, I have like 20 on my list, so I
Love
don't
it.
know.
There are a lot that I want to talk about too. So I want you to go down your list, and then we'll see if there's any time left over for me to bring up any more.
Well, you just your mouse was just hovering over Curtis Samuel.
Oh yeah, you
I
said
like
that
him.
you like a lot of these Washington receivers.
Not a lot.
Okay.
I think McLaurin's clearly in play. Look at his projected ownership. Logan Thomas is a
Yep.
decent value. But like I would rather play Curtis Samuel than Terry McLaurin. Over the last 3 weeks, Curtis Samuel ranks 11th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per game with 17. His volume has been nowhere near that good. So he is like a clear regression candidate. I don't think that's sustainable, but he is mispriced and he does get a clear slot funnel matchup. Giants rank bottom 5 against slot wide receivers, top 5 against outside wide receivers. Again, this is one of our biggest edges that not a lot of other people look at, is making sure you break wide receiver production by slot versus out wide. And,
Yep.
Samuel runs 85% from the slot. McLaurin's, 85% out wide. So that is notable to me.
Okay.
Here, I'll just go through my list of names and you can kind of stop me when you want me to expand on someone. I do like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Amazing matchup.
Assuming health.
I also like Metcalf actually has the nuts matchup. This doesn't always matter for the Seahawks. They kind of just like whichever one you're not on goes off, right? Like
Right.
even when the matchup fits perfect, and he is banged up. Jackson Smith and Jigba also makes a lot of sense. He's sucked ass, but he season high in route share, season high in ADOT. Pete Carroll hyped him up. They're playing more 11 personnel. Arizona is down both their starting slot cornerback and their backup slot cornerback. So theoretically should be a really good matchup for him. Christian Watson, I think if this were any other matchup, I would be all in. I have so much respect for Patrick Surtain, and I am a wide receiver versus CB truther. So
Okay.
I saw that. That's how I got my start in this industry. Did an article for DraftKings under Mike Clay back in the day. But again, it's still only like a 60% chance I think he shadows, and then only on 70% of his routes. But it's just like, I love this player so much best ball exposure. And he could get there anyway. Romeo Dubs is like an argument for, well, if Patrick Surtain is on him and shuts him down, but like not
Right.
an amazing play. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I mean, like he was the wide receiver 1 last week. We were on it. Why wouldn't we be on it again with David Montgomery out? Sam Laporta still banged up. Puka Nacua, I think, is a little underrated.
Are you concerned about the zone versus man splits for Puka?
Yes and no. So it's definitely a reason why, like, I think Kupp is probably the best wide receiver play of the slate.
Okay.
And I probably won't lock him in, but I'm going to have extremely heavy exposure. But I also like Matthew Stafford a lot, as I said. And I think both players finished the season as wide receiver 1s. I'm not on Tutu. Just this is like an insanely highly concentrated offense between 2 players. I think Stafford dub stacks are very live. Again, I think they finished both as wide receiver 1s by year end, but also like probably this week. Kupp, I think, ranked 6th in first read target share last week. Nacua ranked 11th, and the matchup is awesome. Pittsburgh is giving up the most fantasy points per game to wide receiver 1s, the second most schedule adjusted to outside wide receivers. Puka, again, like isn't super high on my list, but I probably won't even have anything outside of Stafford lineups, but I do like Stafford dub stacks.
Double stacks. Oh, interesting. So you're paying way up to have the with Cooper and Puka.
Yeah, I mean, I just what if he goes nuclear? We haven't seen
Right.
it this week, and
Could happen.
no one's really on it. So if I do play Stafford, I would go that route. I mean, like we love the Raiders because it's one of the the most concentrated offenses in football, but like the Rams now without Kyron Williams, like
Yeah.
these two players are going to get like 80% of the XFP this week. So just huge upside there, not really being accounted for. Diggs, if I thought Josh Allen would be fully healthy, is an amazing play. Deontay's like a slight value.
So
But
if you think that all the targets are going to Cooper and Puka, does that mean no interest in Tutu Atwell?
yeah. That's what I said is like, if you look at the last
Oh,
2 weeks, they have like a combined 80% first read target share. It's insane.
okay. So not going to the, he was somebody that I was considering because Tutu coming in at 1% ownership. But yeah, not the way you want to play it.
So those were like just a bunch of guys I'm looking at who weren't quite cash plays for me and were GPP plays who are drawing legit ownership. But I like a lot of my wide receivers in the contrarian range, which is, I don't know, below 6%, I would call it. What would you call it?
Yeah, that it seems like a good enough range, like anything below 6%, pretty contrarian.
Where's JSN for you guys?
We have JSN at 6.4%.
Okay. And then Michael Wilson, did I ask you that before?
2.8%.
Okay. Again, really like Michael Wilson. What about Amari Cooper?
7%.
All right. Really like him. You know, Deshaun Watson's back. Deshaun Watson has targeted him heavily over the last 2 seasons. Cooper really productive his last 2 games before Watson's injury. It's a road game, which like I don't like for Amari Cooper, but it is a phenomenal matchup. Colts are giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones. There's a lot of injuries to that secondary. Where is Mike Evans and then where is Chris Godwin?
Mike Evans 13%, Chris Godwin 6%.
Yeah, so I think that should be at least flipped. AJ Terrell it's like him and Patrick Surtain are like the 2 cornerbacks that actually matter right now, right? But they matter in a really big way to me.
Okay.
Godwin's been really productive his last 2 games. I do think AJ Terrell shadows and shuts down Mike Evans, who has historically been a very shadow sensitive wide receiver. The on paper matchup should be good for Godwin. Really, they're just like elite, best in the league against right wide receivers, and then bottom 4 against slot and left wide receivers. So Godwin should have a favorable matchup for over 75% of his routes, maybe more. I just think he's getting slept on. I maybe don't like him at, what was it, like 12%, but I do.
No, we have Godwin at so this is 6% ownership, but 12% chance to be an optimal for Godwin. So he's our second highest leverage play on the slate.
All right. Well, there you go. So shout out to your tools. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, awesome. We do have Evans 3rd, so it seems like you don't like that quite as much as our tools do, but we at least we like Godwin better than Evans from that perspective. Worth noting. All right. Do you have anybody else that you want to throw it, or should I throw a few names at you?
Yeah, I do have some more names, but
Okay.
we did get a super chat.
Oh, we got a super chat. All right, let me move on over to our super chats. Michael Dixon. Oh yeah, Gabe Davis. So Gabe Davis is one that I really want to bring up to you. You've been talking about the Josh Allen shoulder injury, kind of making you less interested. What do you think about Gabe Davis, who we have at very, very low ownership, and of course it's going to be higher than what we have it at. I think we have it at. Let's see, we have Gabe Davis at 0.1%. Like I don't know if there's any way it's that low, but I have been shocked before at Gabe Davis coming in lower than I expected. What do you think of 5,900 Gabe Davis here?
Yeah, I just think he's like kind of sucked this year. He scored some touchdowns, but besides that, he's been super underwhelming. The coach called him out, I think, heading into week 2, and he hasn't really impressed me by any stretch. But the big thing there is, one, again, I'm legitimately worried about Josh Allen's injury, and I do try and stay away from players tied to quarterbacks who I think might be banged up. Like this happened with Josh Allen last year, is he was above Mahomes, breaking the slate every single week, and then he suffered an injury, and like his passer rating plummeted, all of his stats. He was still scoring fantasy points because he was running. He's not running really this year, but like efficiency way down. And he's like just sort of that guy who kind of like stays quiet on injuries and fights through it, but not always at particularly the highest level. But the biggest thing is probably they just have like clearly defined roles this year and last year. Diggs is the guy who beats single high man coverage. Gabe is the guy who steps up in 2 high coverage, and New England plays a lot of single high man coverage. So I'm not on Davis for a multitude of reasons this week. But
all right, I'm
I could be
disappointed
wrong
to hear that.
Yeah,
the low ownership just makes me interested, but yeah,
I get it. Yeah, maybe he's just one of those guys where he comes in that low and you gotta play him.
Here's I want to throw this
And pay
interesting.
sell out to stop wide receiver ones, right? And like
Right.
Jacoby Myers outscored Adams. I just wouldn't go that route, but I get the thesis.
What about this Jameson? So I have not given much thought to Jameson Williams, but I guess Marvin Jones out maybe helps a little bit. Do you have any interest in Jameson Williams against Baltimore?
Our projections really like him. I'm just not going to play a guy who ran only 9 routes last week.
Did he really? I had not looked at the routes run. I hadn't looked at it closely because it's just such a tough matchup for me that I'm like, I don't really know that I want to go there. Let's see. I think I actually have this here. So yes, week 6, Lions.
There you go.
You can see all of the route participation. Yeah, just 9 routes for Jameson Williams. So even if he takes on those Marvin Jones, all of those, that's up to 22, still playing behind Josh Reynolds, Greg Reynolds. Still not that great. So I don't know if you think he's going to take a step forward in terms of route participation. It's certainly not unexpected. I think you would probably expect him to play more routes as the season goes on, but he never really ran a ton of routes last year either. So I don't know. Feels like a little bit thin. All right. Do you have any others that you want to talk about, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, Rashee Rice is an obvious play.
So actually, I want to look at that from last week, because I was kind of surprised that he played, and maybe you have an explanation for this, but didn't play as much as I thought he had in terms of like route participation. Just 39% route participation last week. He did get 4 targets, 10% target share, so that's pretty good. But what do you make of the fact that he only ran that was down from the previous week?
Yeah. Well, Justin Watson got hurt late in the game. Yeah. But even if you filter for that, and we can do that with the tool, it's just like, I don't know, a little time consuming and complicated to explain right now. But it's just like clearly defined roles for this offense. They're so content to just do this like stupid committee where MVS just does nothing but stretch the field and not get targets. Sky Moore just does nothing but stink out loud. But I mean, like, he's led the team in receiving in like 3 of the last 4 games, despite ranking 5th in routes in every single one of those games. And it's like the best over under of the week. I probably won't be playing him, but I certainly get it. He ranks top 5 in yards per route run of any wide receiver this year. But he's another man versus zone guy, but that doesn't really factor into the matchup this week. But to get into some other, now we're talking about like galaxy brain plays, which like you probably shouldn't play, but no one else is talking about them. And like, those are the plays that excite me. Either Michael Pittman or Josh Downs.
Okay. Michael Pittman or Josh Downs.
Preferably
playing the Browns. I would not have thought of them against the Browns. Like the defense has been so good for the Browns. So this is, to me, very galaxy brain, not wide receivers I had considered. Tell me about it.
So in Gardner Minshew's 2 starts, Josh Downs averages 19 XFP per game. That would rank 8th most among all wide receivers. In Gardner Minshew's 2 starts, Pittman would rank top 12 in both fantasy points per game and XFP per game. Okay. And so like, yes, it's a very bad matchup. The Browns are having like an all-time great season on the defensive side. That probably regresses. They're probably not the greatest defense of all time, but it definitely is a clear bad matchup. But I just think, like, given how insane this volume has been, either one could get there or have a spike week just on target volume alone. If I had to choose, I would pick Downs just because like there's minimal downside to a 4,500 wide receiver, especially one who I think is going to get like 9 targets this week, like low ADOT targets. So they're not that valuable, but I guess he's also leverage off of like Wandale or Kendrick Bourne or some of the other cheaper, like no one's playing him. I don't know, thin play, but like these are my favorite plays to make is the ones no one's talking about. And I got another one for you, super thin, but it excites me. Darius Break the Slayton.
Oh, I was going to bring up Darius Slayton. So
Hell
that was one of the
yeah.
names that I wanted to talk about. And of
Hell
course,
yeah.
we can pull up the Giants here. Man, what a come up for the Giants wide receivers. I'll be curious. So to me, it would be like he's an obvious slam dunk with Daniel Jones in there. I don't know what to make of the fact with Tyrod Taylor out there, how that's going to change things here. But yeah, Darius Slayton, we have here 89% route participation last week. That has been coming up. Love to see that. 5 targets with a 14% target share. I was here, like I was thinking kind of against that Commanders secondary that gives up a ton of big plays. Is this finally the week that we see a big play from Jalen Hyatt too? Like there's I don't know. I was going to ask more broadly about Giants receivers, but Darius Slayton is your guy. Sounds like.
Yeah, I think Wandale's obvious. It's just what's his upside in that like low A dot role? But like,
Yeah,
does he hit value this week? Yeah, probably. He probably 4X's or whatever it is.
8 targets last week.
Yeah. And you could all three of these guys saw season highs in route share, big step up in usage. Jalen Hyatt, like, he could get there, but he also ranks dead last among all wide receivers in targets per route run. I just think he's like super one dimensional and raw.
Yeah. Needs that long bomb to pay it off.
But like Darius Slayton is like over the last 3 seasons, he might rank first among all wide receivers in depth adjusted yards per target over expectation, season high in route share, season high in receiving yards. But like you nailed it. The number one thing is like, this is an insanely good matchup. Washington is giving up nearly 40 DraftKings fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones over their last 3 games. This is why I was all over Drake London last week. This is why Darius Slayton, 3,700, no one on him. Like him more than Josh Downs, like him more than Kendrick Bourne, like him more than Wandale, etc.
Yeah, and he's only 3,700 too, Darius Slayton.
For tournaments, yeah.
And Stewie, yeah, your point is well taken, and I have the same concern. The offensive line for the Giants against the defensive line for Washington definitely complicates things a little bit, but you're gonna have to play some risky, have a little bit of risk associated with your plays in large.
I mean, he had 5 targets and a 19.2 ADOT last week. But it's a thin play. 0% projected ownership, 3,700. You're just really hoping he gets like 2 of those and catches both of them or something along those lines. But there's big upside if that happens, and especially against this defense.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting play. Maybe if I had 3,000 left over in an otherwise chalky lineup, I think I might try the Jalen Hyatt, even though, as you say, like it's pretty even thinner, much thinner than Darius Slayton. There's still like the 70-yard touchdown kind of upside is kind of what you're hoping there, I think, with Jalen Hyatt. But yeah, it's definitely a thin play. People on Wan'Dale Robinson, we're not considering Isaiah Hodgins. He had 15% route participation, something ridiculous like that last week. All right, any other wide receivers that you want to talk about?
Not really.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's any others. Yeah, we talked about the Kansas City situation.
A few people in chat brought up Mecole Hardman, which like I don't know that he's even going to be active this week, but if you want to make an upside argument, it's that, hey, he did average 18.3 fantasy points per game over his last 4 games with the Chiefs. We know the wide receivers currently there stink. It's a good game environment, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's like just totally inactive this week or barely plays.
I think
or now it's just like a 7-way wide receiver by committee situation.
It's so ugly. It's just like they're just making it uglier. I was really hoping because I have huge Rondale Moore bags that he was going to go to Kansas City. That was what I was hoping for, but probably less likely now. All right. Any other wide receivers, or should we move on to tight ends?
No, I think that's it.
All right. Let's talk about some tight ends then. We already got a comment about Darren Waller potentially being interesting this week. But let's start at the top. We'll start with the chalky tight ends, and that is, of course, Travis Kelce getting 20.5% ownership. Nothing too crazy there. Big, our two chalkiest. You're playing way up for Travis Kelce at 8,000, or way down for Luke Musgrave at 3,300, and then of course Mark Andrews third in the mid range there. So, do these 3 make sense as the chalk in their respective price ranges?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, Yeah, I think that's super right. Like if you're building a cash team on FanDuel or DraftKings, it's Kelsey or Musgrave. That's the decision you have to make. And on DraftKings, it's like clearly Musgrave for me. But for tournaments, I might just fade him just simply because, 15% ownership and tight end is so volatile. It usually makes sense to just fade the highest owned guy.
Right.
Travis Kelsey plus we just shit all over their wide receivers, right? Like shouldn't
Right.
Mahomes just like target him 20 times? And Derwin James might be out, which would be huge for Kelsey.
Yeah.
I will say the tight end 4 on this list makes absolutely no sense.
Laporta against Baltimore.
No. Zach Ertz.
Wait, Zach Ertz we have as a tight end 4? Yeah, that is oh yeah, you're right. I missed that.
Because Trey McBride, his route share jumped to 50%. That looks like either a committee situation or McBride's just usurping him.
Yeah, we've got McBride. I think this is probably incorrect ownership. Like my guess is that enough people have noticed the change there, but like it makes sense that people are going to want to play Cardinals against the Seattle pass defense, Cardinals pass catchers. But yeah, you're right. I think it's likely that McBride ends up higher owned than Zach Ertz. What do you think? Who do you think ends up the higher owned of the two?
McBride or Zach Ertz?
Yeah,
I would say McBride, but I don't think he's a particularly good play either.
Okay.
They're going to be 50-50 route shares each, and they're going to be cannibalizing each other's production. I mean, they are clearly featuring the tight end position. There's just like not a lot of upside when it's two guys sharing that role.
Right. That's fair. All right. Who do you like? Who else do you like that is contrarian here?
I just want to plug my site one last time, and also plug your site. Like we're giving the show away for free. If we don't start getting subscriptions from this, like we might have to cancel it. So like, please, if you like the show, enjoy it, please consider subscribing. If you want an Fantasy Points premium subscription, all of my DFS content, college football projections, everything included in that. It's only $75. It's 50% off because 7 weeks have already passed, but you get the remainder of the season, the playoffs, only $75 for the remainder of the year. And then the data suite, 75% off, only $50. Really think we have the best content in the industry. Check us out, fantasypoints.com.
All right. That was.
Do you want to do a plug for your stuff?
Neil? Yeah, and a good reminder, and also when you sign up, use the links in the description of this video, particularly for the stochastic stuff. Like it gets tracked to wherever you sign up from. So if you, if you like the content, want us to keep being able to do the show, please do use our links when you sign up. But yeah, that was a good shout out, and of course we've got the fantasy points in the description of the video as well. You can find fantasy points links. I don't know if we have a direct link to the fantasy points data suite, but it's also very easy to find. It's right in the center of the page when you go to fantasypoints.com.
Data.fantasypoints.com.
Okay. Yep. That's also very easy. Yeah, it's a good reminder that like, yeah, we do the show for free. You and I don't do a ton of selling on the show. Like most stochastic shows, I'm doing 3 or 4 reads throughout the show. We do like we feature our tools, so I guess in a way that theoretically should generate some sales, but it really has not to this point. So yeah, if you like the show and you're thinking about signing up, please do so and use our links when you
otherwise it gets canceled, then it's on you guys. So
yeah, it's all your fault. Because Scott and I, we both love doing the show.
We're having a lot of fun. We think we got something special here.
Yeah. All right. That was a good plug, and I actually thought you were going to lead your plug into talking about Jonnu Smith, because you talked about him earlier as we were talking about playing against man or versus zone. Is Jonnu Smith one of your highlights in tight ends this week?
Yeah. Again, I do like attacking those clear situations, like the man versus zone sensitive players, because like other sites aren't really talking about it as much. Buccaneers play zone at the 3rd highest rate. And again, this is like the most man zone sensitive player in fantasy. Negative yards per route run against man, which is like so funny. And 17th among all receivers against zone. Not quite a full-time player, but since week 2, he ranks 4th among all tight ends, receiving yards, 5th in fantasy points scored. I do also like Kyle Pitts though, just because like, okay, the only question with him is like, what is he fully healthy? And to me, he's clearly back, and he's saying that, and Arthur Smith is saying that. And also, this offense isn't really as gross as it was last year. By dropbacks per game, this was like the least pass heavy offense in like 37 years, no exaggeration. And this year they're middle of the pack. And Desmond Ritter's catchable target rate has gone up. His turnover worthy throw rate has skyrocketed, but like the receivers are actually now getting more catchable passes. Those are two players we're talking about. I really do think, take out Zach Ertz, I don't think he's in play, but Kelsey, Musgrave, Andrews, Laporta, very obvious, and Njoku, pretty obvious. He's a good leverage play off of Musgrave. Jonnu Smith is a good leverage play off of Musgrave. And then like really, what are you left with based on after everyone I've talked about? Then you just have the punts. You have Michael Mayer, 2,700. He has Brian Hoyer, which, isn't great, but he did lead the team in receiving yards last week. Route share jumped all the way up to 67%. He was a player I was probably way too high on coming out of college. I kept up waffling back and forth between him and Laporta. Wish I
oh man,
wish I
that is
Laporta.
rough.
I know. I just kept waffling. Trey McBride, same thing. It's just he's 2,600, and maybe it's like the same role as Zach Ertz, but like I'd rather play Mayer, and that's about it. It's just kind of thin. Someone brought up Darnell Washington. I think that's going to be a 50-50 split too. It's a great matchup for the tight ends there, but I think that's going to be another 50-50 between him and Connor Hayward. And honestly, they might prefer Washington as more of like the blocking tight end.
Okay.
He has the sixth or the fifth offensive lineman in his IG handle name. So a really, really exciting player and prospect and super athletic, but is a bit raw. I wouldn't really trust him.
Okay. So even with the Muth out for the foreseeable future, it doesn't necessarily make Darnell Washington a play.
You know who's an insane splits guy too? Is Noah Fant, has 0 yards per route run against single high, but like behind only Tyreek and too high. It's something like that. And it's like a perfect defensive matchup, but that's a guy who hasn't exceeded 18 routes in any single game. Plus either playing more 11 personnel. So maybe that hurts him, but
okay.
I
was going to bring him up.
Were you really?
Because we have some interest in Geno Smith. I'm like, yeah, he's, I guess, the top tight end there in Seattle. Like maybe somebody we consider in our Geno stacks, but I didn't realize he had never run more than 18 routes in a week. That's not very promising. Is Cole Kmet worth playing without Justin Fields?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Okay. Either of the Buffalo tight ends?
Oh, Logan Thomas, slight value. He kind of crushed me last week. I was nearly all in on it. I don't know why I do that. It's so stupid. Never go all in on a tight end. It's just such a volatile position. But yeah, so he's averaging 5.6 targets, 10.8 fantasy points per 4 quarters. 10.8 would rank 7th best among all tight ends. Priced it as tight end 12, neutral matchup. He's fine. That was, I think, the last player on my list.
I want to ask you about any interest in Darren Waller.
Oh, and yeah, Darren Waller too. I mean, it makes sense. Is like, you could say he's just basically, a wide receiver for the team, and maybe he's even their wide receiver one. And like, what was the stat I listed off? They're giving up 40 DraftKings fantasy points per game to wide receiver ones.
Yeah, good point. Might be Waller.
Although you and I were also talking before the show about how, you miss on a player like Adam Thielen in best ball. You want to raise your exposure in DFS. Right. I have so much Darren Waller.
Me too.
Might have overlooked him this week, but no, that's a really good call. Big upside for tournaments. Looks like no one's on him. So wow.
Yeah. 2% protected ownership looks really nice for Darren Waller against that Commander secondary. So yeah, that's something that
Giants offensive line, I think, just like imploded me so badly because
I know, me too.
So much Daniel Jones and so much Darren Waller, and the bad offensive line. Daniel Jones is hurt; he can't get the ball out, and Waller has to run more chip block routes.
I think you and I had sort of in one way the same approach with best ball, where it's like, all right, if I don't get an elite quarterback, you can always fall back on Daniel Jones and Aaron Richardson, Anthony Richardson. Like it was like
And Aaron
that play.
Rodgers for me, by the
Oh
way.
yeah, and
Lots of Aaron.
actually me too. Actually me too. I like Aaron Rodgers quite a bit. It was like, man, Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson, they're gonna feast. Like yeah, you're right. All of those like after pick 100 quarterbacks just letting us down. It is
I was saying
not
that the
working out.
way to handle like the underdog tournament is to either, max it 150 teams, really spread your ownership out, or just wait until like the last 2 weeks before the season starts and then just draft 30 teams and just don't give a fuck about spreading out ownership and just treat it like a GPP.
Yeah.
And then I did that. Now I have so many teams with like Raheem Mostert and teams with Devon A-Chain and like all these like great and they're just all dead because they don't have a single quarterback. So
yeah, I think I assume my teams that I was drafting later on are performing better because I was all out on both Achane and Mostert until we got the news that Jeff Wilson was maybe done for the season. It was like, yeah, I think he's probably going to play, is what Michael Janis said. And then we didn't have anybody sign there. So just like in the last like week, I started jamming both Achane and Mostert and actually ended up above weight to the field. So maybe that is the approach for best ball, is just draft late when you have better information, because the fade would not have worked out with those Dolphins running backs. Any other tight ends? I don't think I had anybody else that I wanted to talk about with you.
Yeah, I really don't think so.
All right, let's make some lineups. All right, I guess you sometimes like to talk about defenses, so I want to give you the opportunity. Are there any defenses that are jumping out to you this week?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm behind on my defense research. Giants, Commanders definitely stood out, but can I check our projections actually? Maybe there's something better.
Sure. Yeah. See if you find anything. Yeah, Giants are top in terms of ownership for us. We have nice leverage on the Broncos against Jordan Love and the Packers.
We're the Commanders in comparison to the Giants.
We have the Commanders at 6.7% ownership.
Oh yeah, two cheap punts. Kansas City Chiefs 2,400. New England Patriots, I think, are legitimately viable. Josh Allen, like I said, I don't know that he's healthy. There's win concerns. It's a
nice leverage for us in the Patriots. We have 6% ownership, 8.5% chance of being optimal.
Yeah, Ravens are pretty good too, 2,500.
Yeah, so we got options. We got options at defense. Do you want to keep talking defense, or you want to make some lineups?
No.
All right, good enough. And so this is something I've heard a lot of people saying. Raiders defense against Teabag and the Bears. I'm not convinced that they're going to throw the ball that much. Is my only I'm like, if they did, maybe they just run it down
the Raiders
throats. Yeah,
it really should be a Josh Jacobs game. Really should.
Well, he's saying that the Raiders defense is going to smash, which makes me think like, my concern is like maybe the Bears aren't throwing enough. That like, because you want turnovers is like the best way to score fantasy points as a defense. And if the Bears just run it all game,
right? But they also might just score 0 points. Like, what is their implied?
True, and that is like 10 worth 10 fantasy points. So yeah, I can see it. They're actually, I thought the Raiders were going to be chalkier than they are. We've only got them at 6% ownership. So
at that Bears have a decent total. They're at 22.
Do they? Man, okay.
Wow.
All right. We are going to make
Max Crosby's going to definitely get a sack though. Maybe 3, maybe 5.
Scott, I was thinking about the lineups we made last week, and we didn't cash last week. We've cashed plenty in the lineups that we have made, but I felt like I let us down. So my role in the show is I'm supposed to be the DFS guy. I'm supposed to, have good DFS advice. I think last week we went too contrarian. Like I think that
I was thinking the exact same thing.
We didn't play any chalk. Like, it was like looking at the end, I was like, oh yeah, we don't have any chalk. And like, you really do want to balance it out. In a milli, it's obviously not as important as like other contests. Like maybe a milli, you don't necessarily need to play some chalk, but generally the better lineups, like you want really highly projected lineups. I didn't go back and look at it, but I think our lineup probably didn't project all that well. We played a lot of Galaxy Brain plays. So I think, and like we didn't play, we talked about how much we liked Raheem Mostert last week. We didn't play Raheem Mostert. We didn't play Kyron Williams even, I think was the other one. Like a lot of the chalk plays hit, and we liked the chalk plays, but we didn't play any of them in our lineups. And I feel like that was on me, because that's kind of my job on this show, is to keep us within the DFS.
I think you're absolutely right. It is all your fault.
Yeah, and I'm glad you agree with me there.
I was actually thinking the same thing. This is just like a fatal flaw I have, where like I could identify what is, a good play at ownership versus what is Galaxy Brain versus what is, leverage, but like, I just kind of sometimes just go like way too off the walls.
Right.
And so I need you to rein me in. Like, I think
All right.
if I had started setting a rule that was like, okay, 2 chalky guys at least every lineup, my results would be way better. Cause I'm just like naturally a contrarian person. So
Yeah.
my lineups are that way anyway.
Well, this week we're going to do it right. We're going to have a nice mix, have a couple chalky plays in there. We can still play plenty of contrarian plays. This is we are building for the millie here, so we want to be pretty contrarian. But yeah, let's win it. Let's get it. Let's not only cash, but let's win $1 million this week. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. We're gonna make 2 lineups. Do you wanna start the first one or should
I? You can start it.
All right. I am going to start at quarterback. And I'm not going to play Patrick Mahomes. I'm also not going to play Josh Allen because I know you don't really want to. No, actually, I liked your idea of the double stack with Stafford. I think I'm going to start there.
Ooh, this is spicy. This is interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do the double Stafford stack.
We're not going to like this lineup once it's done, but.
Yeah, no, it's going to be disgusting. All right. We only have 4,400 left per player now.
Wow.
After doing the Stafford double. How are we filling it in, Scott?
Well, we got to chase value. So I'm going to have to pull up some value names. We'll put Slayton in there because he was definitely one of them.
That's a good call. And this lineup, by the way, we're already playing more chalk than we played in our lineups last week because we have Cooper Kupp in here.
Right. That was, yeah. I also said Raheem Mostert should be 75% owned, and then
right, and then we didn't. I don't think we played him in either of our lineups.
Well, my whole thing was like building lineups around fading him. So like I finished top 10 with a Tua onslaught lineup that either didn't have him or it had Salvin Ahmed. But yeah, anyway.
Roscoe says, yeah, I only played Atwell because of the show. I still trust you, though. I appreciate you still trusting us. We're going to, this week, we're going to do better. All right. So we put Slayton in there. We got our double stack for the Rams. I don't feel like we need to do anybody from Pittsburgh. You did talk about how much interest. Wait, maybe that was my earlier show. Who had interest in? Yeah, it was not you. Who had interest in Jalen Warren? That was.
It would be Matt. Deontay, if anyone.
Okay,
but we don't need even that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have 45-40 left per player. Do you want to do a defense now, or do you want to keep looking?
Yeah. What was the cheapest defense I liked? Was it 2,100 Patriots?
Patriots, yeah. Is that where you want to go?
Yeah. We could stack them on the bet that the weather or Josh Allen injury or something, but I probably wouldn't do that.
Okay. Not necessary. So we could go to a cheap tight end here to also bring our salary down.
I would like to do that. You want to go with I was gonna say Mayer.
We got
or Musgrave.
Or we could do Janu.
Yeah, your call.
I say we go. All right, you have a thought. You have an opinion.
I was gonna say let's just go Mayer just because he's the cheapest. If we feel like we have room, we can.
Yeah, upgrade. We can move up if we want to. Okay, I think that makes it. They're playing the Bears, very involved last week. All right, so we have 2 running backs. We could throw Michael Wilson here and actually play some.
Yeah, let's see that.
All right, let's see what was he 30 something? I guess I could probably search this. Maybe that'd be faster. All right. Throwing him in there. Now we have over 7,000 left over now. So we can.
That's good because I kind of don't like the cheap running backs. Kenneth Walker.
Love it. Getting our chalk in there a little bit. So now we could play Aaron Jones.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then we have 300 left over. I mean, 300 is fine to leave over on the table, but we could if you see anybody that you want to upgrade here.
Yeah, let's check out tight end again.
There, if I take a Mayer out of there, spend up to 3,000. Dawson Knox, Kate Otten, Noah Fant. Yeah. No obvious upgrades to me.
No.
All right, so we're gonna keep Mayer in there. Patriots defense. Could pay
Yeah,
up
let's
to
see.
2,400, so we could play the Chiefs, the Cardinals, or the Chargers. I don't think any of those are upgrades really.
I think we have Chiefs highest in our projection, so we can just go there.
All right. So now we're using full salary.
And then I
Good.
guess it makes sense that maybe Chiefs just dominate the Chargers. So, some chalky players like Keenan and Palmer flop, and maybe Pacheco doesn't get the touchdowns like he typically doesn't.
Right.
But it's
I
just
think
like
this is
spread out. Kadarius gets one, Hardman gets one.
I think this is better than the lineups we made last week because we do have some chalky pieces. We've got Kenneth Walker in there. We've got Cooper Kupp raising our projections. Like obviously, like ownership is bad. So like I don't want to make it sound like our mistake was not playing high enough ownership. Our mistake was not playing high enough projection. I think like I think we didn't play. We played more Galaxy Brain plays and not quite enough of the like this guy just projects really well type plays. Whereas I think this week Kenneth Walker, Cooper Kupp, like these are just two of the better point per dollar plays on the slate. Puka's up there as well, like looks good. So I really like this lineup. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. The only question I would ask is upgrading maybe Slayton or Wilson to Deontay. If that just like, do we need?
I don't think we need the run back.
Okay, all right.
Personally, I think a double stack with no run back is totally fine. So I like it. But if somebody wanted to do that, change things up, replace one of those guys, I think that would be another way to approach a similar lineup up here. All right, we're gonna enter this one, and then we're gonna make one more. Oh, change. Wait.
Did it do the same thing? Why does it always do this to you?
So now it's saying it worked last week, remember? But now it's saying, do you want to leave?
Oh, you're not logged in.
Oh, I'm not logged in. Why is that? All right, hang on.
You could just. I could take a picture of it and then send it to you.
Okay, let's do that.
We'll do that. Yeah.
We'll take a picture of it, and I will enter this after the fact. That's weird. I had just been signed in earlier while we were doing this, so I don't know what's going on there.
All right, I'm gonna DM it to you.
Okay, thank you. And then we will just redo the same thing here without entering it just yet, but I'll enter these later. All right, I got your DM. All right, let's do lineup number 2. Which quarterback do you want to start with, or which stack do you want to start with?
Let's go cheap. Let's go Howell plus Curtis Samuel.
Ooh, Howell and Samuel. All right. We used Slayton in the last one. Do we want to bring back on our Howell lineup, or is that something we can kind of reserve? Like,
yeah, I think we should think about Logan Thomas, Terry McLaurin, Darius Slayton, Darren Waller, Wan'Dale Robinson. But I'm hoping the way we construct the lineup kind of just figures that out for us at the end.
Okay, sounds good.
And maybe 2 of those guys even.
So you said you don't like the cheap running backs. So should we start with some expensive running backs? Or
yeah, I'm gonna go on.
No, just asking you where you want to start here. If you want to like fill in with the running backs, or kind of save that for later. What do you think?
No, I'd like to start with that and then let you pick 2 of 3. Pick between Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson. Oh no, Brian Robinson wouldn't work on this lineup, but right, I do like him. So Eckler, Jones, Jacobs, Walker. I think if I were picking, I think I would just go Walker, Jones again.
Yeah, that was so. Those are obviously those are the running backs we like the best. I was sort of considering like, what about Saquon Barkley as the bring back on the stack, but I don't know if that necessarily makes sense. I really like.
No, it does make sense.
We could go.
That might honestly make more
Aaron
sense.
Jones. Should we go Barkley and Walker? Go like 2 pay up options.
I kind of don't want to limit us.
All right.
I don't know.
So let's go.
That's fine. Whatever you want to do.
We go Barkley, Pacheco, or
no. That wasn't an option.
You're right. You didn't give me that option. All right. I don't want to go Aaron Jones. We're skipping Aaron Jones in this one. We already have
do Walker and Barkley, and let's see what we can do. We can swap off if need be.
All right, and we are still like once again. Now we have 3 fairly contrarian options: Howell, Samuel. Maybe
I'll put in Thomas just to. Why not?
Thomas.
Logan.
Oh, okay. Yes. It's like, what? Okay, gotcha.
We could
Logan
always take
Thomas.
him out. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe Howell just scores on the ground and Samuel gets a touchdown and Barkley does something on his 28 touches.
No, I like it. I think it's nice. I mean, a lot of the time with the tight end, I just end up putting him with the quarterback or in the game stack somewhere because it can be hard to decide. Should we fill in our defense now just to get an idea? It looks like we're gonna have pretty nice salary left over. Let's see.
Patriots and just see what happens.
All right. Yeah, we can see if we can upgrade later. Wide receivers. Now we have 6,600 left per player.
Could we do Cup and Palmer?
I was going to say Godwin. Wait, so you really like Josh Palmer? I feel like we didn't talk that much about Josh Palmer.
I mean, this is just like the best game environment of the slate. When these two teams faced off last year, he led the team in targets with 18. He's always been.
It's only 4,800. Didn't realize that.
Over the last 2 seasons, when Williams has missed, he averages 15 XFP per game. That would rank 12th best on the slate. He's seen at least 7 targets and gain at least 60 yards in 3 straight games.
All right. I like it.
We could always move to something else.
What I'm wondering is, because I feel like you made a really compelling case for Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of thinking, should we downgrade Saquon and put Chris Godwin in the flex?
Yeah, let's see what happens.
All right, let's try that out. Now we have 6,700 left over. We could put Gibbs in there and then upgrade somewhere else, or Pacheco.
Yeah, either of those makes a lot of sense.
I'm trying to decide if there's any other cheap running backs. I don't know. What about like Deontay Foreman?
I'd rather have Patriots defense, I think, than go that route.
Okay. All right. So you're thinking we could go to Jahmyr Gibbs
or Pacheco.
I think I prefer Pacheco.
Maybe even Brian Robinson, and then not
remove
Logan
one
Thomas.
Or the other.
Probably not, but like.
So then, if
he has 2 receiving touchdowns, I don't know.
Brian Robinson does.
Yeah.
Huh. Didn't realize that. Okay. So we could at this point. All right, if we took Logan Thomas out, then we could play Jonnu.
Mm.
That would be paying up. I guess he's more expensive.
What about we go a little bit crazier? What about we stick with Logan, go to Eckler instead of Brian Robb?
Okay, let me see. Wait.
I don't know. I'm getting too crazy here, I think.
Wait. Eckler instead of Brian Robinson, then who else are we down off of Godwin, or who do you think?
I was going to take out Palmer, going to take out Logan, but I don't know. Now I'm brain farting.
All right.
I'm shook.
You're shook. I mean, we are in a mess right. This is just a messy lineup.
All right, take out Brian Robinson, put in who is it? Pacheco or Gibbs?
I'd say Pacheco personally.
Yeah, that's fine.
Eat that chalk. So we've got the 2 chalky running backs. And now we still have 600 left over. Are there any defenses that we like? Broncos is sort of interesting, but they're not a great defense.
Can you
Palmer.
click out of Patriots so I know how much?
Yeah, so we can pay up to the Lions.
I'll have an answer for you in 1 second. Nope. Oh, Ravens. Yeah, they're a great play.
Oh, all right. Interesting. Ravens against that Detroit offense.
On the road?
I mean, you say that like that means something to me. Are they much better on are the Lions much worse on the road?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Over the last 2 seasons, Goff has like 22 touchdowns and 4 interceptions at home, and like 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions on the road. I don't know.
Oh,
It's pretty
all right.
crazy.
All right. So what do you think of this lineup? Is this we got the chalk with Walker and Pacheco getting a little and Cup. So we do have, I'd say, the requisite number of chalk pieces in this lineup, but we've still got a good number of like Godwin at 6% ownership, Palmer not particularly high owned, and then just like the Sam Howell stacks not very chalky. So I think we're doing a better job of like playing lineups that just like aren't getting too crazy, but like we're still, playing some of the plays we like. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's great. I also think that neither one of these lineups really excites me, but it might just be that week. I haven't started building yet, so that certainly could be the case.
Okay, so you're gonna send it out on Twitter to everybody. You're gonna say this is a lineup that excites me once you found it, but right now, so far, our lineups don't excite you.
I think they're built smart and they have plays I like in them, but like this, I don't know. I want to fall in love with it, you know?
Yeah, part of me wants to build a Seattle stack. Like, there's part of me is like, I
All
feel
right,
like
let's do that.
we're
We
gonna
don't
do
have
one
to.
more.
Yeah. Okay.
Should we take a maybe I might play maybe we'll just build 3 lineups this week. So maybe I'll take a picture of this one too.
I just sent
What
it
did
to
you
you.
just sent it to me? Okay, all right. Let's do a Seattle stack because I feel like that one could be more fun.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do a Geno Smith. Which receiver? So do you have a feeling of whether Metcalf is going to play?
I think he will play.
Okay, and you say it's a great matchup for him, right?
Yeah. And I think he'll be under owned, but he's definitely not on paper as good of a play as Lockett. And
Okay,
so then it's just a question of how contrarian do you want to be? And I don't think we know the answer to that yet.
yeah.
Or you can make that decision. That's fine.
So I love the Geno play. You think that Lockett is objectively better than Metcalf in this spot?
Yeah, with the health concerns, yeah, and it's kind of the reverse of last year. Last year, Metcalf was like top 10 in XFP per game, but Lockett was outproducing him. And then this year, Lockett is like top 10 in XFP per game, Metcalf well behind him, but Metcalf's been just slightly outperforming him. He does have the matchup in his favor. I really am just like so shook by Seattle's receivers. I never get it right. Like I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is the matchup. This is the actually, maybe I found a skeleton key. I got to check Nick's article, a
Okay.
writer, Football Insights. He did talk about this and he did have a strong lean. So maybe he's right. I'll look that up. I will say, I don't want both Metcalf and Lockett. I want one and then JSN.
Agreed. I was going to say the same thing because and I think that's historically something that we've seen. Like these two just don't go off in the same week. Obviously, it's football. Every sample size when you're looking at individual like teams and it's a little bit small sample size. But
and I want Mike Wilson in the
yes, I was going to say that's the. Now we're going straight up with the who is the guy that's like in the good spots and Michael Wilson. Perfect. I love it. I love this. This is a great start to me. This is an exciting start to a lineup. We're finding a lineup that excites us, I think. All right. You're looking that up. So I'm going to start poking around. So we've got 5,900 left over. Thinking about what I might like here. Foreman is sort of interesting. Could go back to Aaron Jones. We played Kenneth Walker in both of ours already. I think that he just makes a lot of sense. I think he's good chalk this week. So I think we could go back there again. We could go. So this one, we don't have all the other Washington guys. So we could go Brian Robinson here as another kind of cheaper option. But we'll see. We'll see what we need left over once you've figured out the skeleton key to Metcalf versus Lockett.
Yeah, sorry. I just went through his article. So Arizona plays too high defense at the second highest rate in the league. But like there isn't a clear wide receiver one for Seattle in these situations.
Okay.
Lockett, definitely the leader by targets per route run. Metcalf, the leader by yards per route run. Yeah, they're just impossible to figure out. So I would just say JSN if we want to be unique, Lockett if we want to be sharp. But I like how we have it right now.
You mean Metcalf if we want to be unique, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
JSN either. Okay. Let's keep it. Let's keep it how it is. We got
All right,
so now
nice.
now we have gone pretty contrarian. Oh, so we're not going Kenneth Walker in this lineup because we're going the stash
That's right.
instead.
That's right.
So that takes him out of consider. I just don't want the Walker in this particular lineup. So here I think do we go Aaron Jones and what do you think of like Aaron Jones and Brian Robinson in this one?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
All right. So now we have.
I also really worry about Josh Jacobs' slate breaking upside. I know we haven't considered him yet, but
As in, like, you think that we should consider him?
Yeah, but I also love Jones and I love Brian Robinson.
I feel like the upgrade in terms of price from Jones, like I think it's feasible to put Josh Jacobs in there instead of Aaron Jones here.
Well, I like Robinson stacked with Washington too, because remember Giants are going to be the chalky defense this week.
Yeah, so we can play.
And he's one of the most game script sensitive run. So it's like a singular bet that makes a lot of sense.
Yep, I like that. Now we have 6,700 left over, and one of our positions is tight end. Do we want to do a Kelsey lineup?
So in this article, what Nick wrote up, by the way, was that he thinks this is a good week for the ancillary weapons like JSN and Noah Fant. We could just take out Metcalf and do that, but no, don't do that. No. I'm sorry. What was your question?
Do we want to make a Kelsey lineup? We haven't made a Kelsey.
Oh, that's fun.
All right, we're gonna do Kelsey at tight end. Now we've got 5,400 left over in the flex. McLaurin, we could have McLaurin in there. We could do Javonte, Marquise Brown, but you didn't. I mean, we could full game stack with Marquise Brown, but more of a Michael Wilson spot.
I mean, it also like.
Wait, what if we?
Hollywood's a top 3 cash play for me. I'm just saying for tournaments, I like Wilson, and no one's talked about him, but like the volume with Hollywood has been insane.
What if we went up from Aaron Jones to Josh Jacobs?
Or Jacobs.
And then we could play Deontay Foreman in the flex if we wanted to, I think. Let's see. Yep. So now we have just enough left over for Deontay Foreman if we want to do that. What would you think of that? Or Josh Palmer, actually. Yeah, we would have secondary correlation with Travis Kelce and Josh Palmer if we wanted to.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well done.
Is this a more exciting lineup for you, Scott?
Yeah. I could safely say that it is.
All right. We have made one lineup that excites Scott. I think that is good enough for me. Is that
they're all good? They're all good lineups. Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree. Like this one, to me, this one is the most exciting of the 3 lineups we made. So I think I'm with you that this is the most exciting. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. A lot of the times the lineups that win are not your favorites, but I like this one. I think it looks like a really
how much time do you have, Neil? Do you have time to make 147 more?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. We can make 147 lineups. That would be fun. I thought you were seriously going to say like let's make one more, and I was going to say yeah, we can do that. I don't care. but no, we made 3 lineups. That's more than we usually make. Any other thoughts here?
No, I'm feeling good. Had a blast as always. I think we got a good read on the slate. I think big unique upside this week. Big edge. Feeling good.
Absolutely. Me too. And we've gone over 2 hours. So we've been talking about like maybe we cut back a little bit of time, and now this is our longest show yet. But I thought it was a good one. I thought it was an interesting slate to talk about too. So I'm glad we took the time to really dive deep into it. But that is going to do it for our show. Thanks everybody for watching. It has been fun as always. Please do subscribe to both of our channels if you haven't already done so. Hit the like button on this video so it gets a little bit of traction. Thanks everybody for watching. Good luck this weekend.